liquored up. Let's do this.
Good old rocky top. Rocky top Tennessee. Rocky top Tennessee.
Troops Smooch and the Dawg Show. Another new episode is coming up tonight. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show.
You're listening to the one and only Dawg Show. Your hosts, Troop Brenson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Welcome, Dawg fans, to the one and only Dawg Show with Troop and Smooch. Special guest, Coach Hayes. All eyes are on the NFL draft tonight. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see us kind of looking off to the side as we are watching the draft take place right now. What a night for these young men and for college football as they head to the NFL. We're so excited because this, in the last few years, Smooch, has been a promotion for your Georgia Bulldogs, a built-in advertisement for Kirby Smart and that culture.
Yeah, I mean, we've watched guys that did not start at Georgia go in the first round. That has actually happened. And so
That's crazy.
Yeah, they're an NFL factory, and it's because of all of the things, especially when the three of us are together, when Troop, Smooch, Coach are all together, we talk about the standard, the culture, just to an enormous extent. And that's the reason coaches will claw and fight to draft a Georgia offensive tackle in the 6th or 7th round, because they know at that pick they're getting incredible value because of what the culture that kid brings with him to the team. And so yeah.
So Smooch, strangely enough, we started the show with Rocky Top, and it was done by the Dawg Show, so our version of Rocky Top.
Yeah,
because as we preface this show, there's been a lot of things going on the last few days. Not to mention today, man, the Dawg Show was on Twitter just starting all kind of fires, and we didn't try to put them out. We just kind of, kept them going a little bit. Missouri and Tennessee. We didn't know they were a rivalry.
The new rivalry, right? Missouri, Tennessee
those guys
rivalry.
going, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We're also going to talk about, there's been some stuff recruiting, and it never stops. As Georgia got a big. I say it's big. It sounds big. It feels big especially because he was a Florida Gator for a short time, Jaden Rashada. And we made a little bit of fun last year as he supposedly left from Miami, took that big NIL deal with looked like Gators. That fell through, and he left them hanging and moved on to Arizona State, I think. And now he has committed to play for Georgia, actually as a backup. We'll talk about what that means and how we see that shaking out, as a recruitment from a top flight quarterback in the past. And of course, Christen Miller, all kind of things going on with the NIL, and USC also kind of weighed in and thought they had some stuff going on. It is obviously it's the first night of the NFL draft. So it's a
word about
big
pick
night.
pick number 5. If you want to know where we are actually live recording about pick
so much else going on. It was a day where our Twitter fingers were quite busy today, and we're so glad to be here. Thank you for tuning in, folks. Episode number 34 as we inch closer and closer to
94.
That's what did I say?
34.
34. 94. Man, a lot farther than that. 94 we get closer to 100, and 34 is a big number for Georgia.
That's my pant size is 34.
94 is a bigger number for the podcast. Coach Hayes, and
yes,
had a big week as well. I know you were watching this draft and you're thinking about Georgia player, but you're looking at these other teams as well and looking at them fill some needs. Things are so fluid during the draft, though. You think you got things pegged, and then you got somebody signs A.J. Brown. Is that what happened with the Eagles today? And then their needs change. So very interesting night for college football fans.
It's a great day and a great evening for for football fans in general, honestly, because even if you have a little bit of Falcons love in your blood, I mean, I just look at it from the standpoint of seeing our guys from UGA being drafted. And what I love are the stories that come from these kids that started with nothing, the ones that were crawling in the cellars, and then you see them come out on draft day and just shine. I think about Eric Stokes, who got selected right there at the end of the first round to the Green Bay Packers, a kid that was, just out of the perimeter of Atlanta, 3-star athlete, comes in, developed, grows with the program. You just see a little bit of improvement every year, and then finally his last year is just out of this world and what he did in his contributions for Georgia. I see the same things happening. There's going to be one storyline we're going to be talking the same way. And honestly, I know I'm a little bit on the bias side to this, but I think that story could be Ladd McConkey if he gets drafted in the first round, which I know that could be. There is a little speculation of him maybe going in the latter part of the first round to Kansas City. But even if he gets selected in the second round, around the 40th pick, between the 40th and 50th pick, he's going to be elated. We're going to be elated. That it's just another success story that you love to hear from that standpoint. And just going forward, man, I just love talking ball with you two. It's been very important. It's funny. It's that Missouri, we're not even going to get a chance to have an opportunity to really carry on that little legacy with them because we're not even playing them this year. But Tennessee, we definitely are. But it's really been nice to see. You imagine how many bookmarks and how many receipts we'd be cashing out on them USC Trojans today after they thought they had Christen Miller and they thought they were going to be building some kind of platform over there of Georgia players. But we quickly turned that around. So just a lot of good storylines. And right now being able to watch the draft and seeing where maybe we're going to have a couple, maybe three, more than likely two in the first round of the draft.
So I got a question for you, Smooch. And it is a shame that we don't play Missouri, but even more shame that we won't get a chance to play a team like USC, which on Twitter the last couple of days I wanted to say, wait till you guys actually get to play Georgia, and then all that talk's going to look really silly. But that's not going to happen. They're not going to ever get the chance to play Georgia. I don't think they're going to be in the top 12.
Missouri might end up able to play Georgia.
Missouri might, but not USC, who I was really kind of – So do you think there's a chance? And we know in terms of talent and impact and Georgia players and Georgia legacy what it means, but is there a chance that Mims gets selected ahead of Brock Bowers tonight?
Yes. Yeah, I think that you asked me if I thought, not that if I think it's a good idea. I mean, Joe Alt just got selected before Brock Bowers. That just happened. So, yeah, I mean, and this
who that?
Well, he's probably the top tackle on some people's boards in the draft, but San Diego needs a tight end. There's a good one in this draft if you happen to have the fifth pick. But so yeah, I think there's a chance of it. You see it every year. You see these GMs. It's hard to believe that sometimes businessmen aren't the best football people, and sometimes they make these bizarre. Every year there's a receiver that runs a 4.2 at the combine that's never done anything in his college career that creeps into the first round because he can fly. Ruggs for Alabama was drafted ahead of Judy, who had all of the success you could want in college, but Ruggs ran that flashy 40 time. When it comes to offensive tackle, when you're 6'8", 3 and a lot, whatever it is, 350, and you can move like Mims can, somebody's going to fall in love. And you only have to have one, Troop Brinson, fall in love with you. And so, yeah, I really think Brock Bowers could be the to me, he's the best player available, and he could still be the second player from Georgia picked. Yeah,
offensively, he could be that difference maker. And you hear teams that win NFL win the Super Bowls, a lot of times they have tight ends who are impact tight ends. And he can be that player that can push you over the top or that you need as a playmaker because they open so many things up and they're tough to cover. It's tough to account for a really, really good tight end. And we saw Brock Bowers. We know what kind of difference maker he is, and he's just not your average tight end. Obviously, he's not. And we hear all the pundits talk about, well, is he really a tight end? And can he block? And I get all that because you're going to pick it apart. And some teams just have so many holes that they can't go for a tight end and shouldn't go for a wide receiver. And some of those are sexy picks. It's tough to pass up on some of those skill players.
Yeah.
We know what Brock Bowers has got, and somebody's going to – it might be that he ends up in a more favorable position if he does slide just a little bit with a better quarterback. What do you think about that, Coach?
I think that's a great take. And, honestly, some of these general managers, we probably evaluate. I know I do sometimes. They overthink it because we're obviously very biased for what Brock Bowers wants to be and what he can contribute to any program. But you've also got to see what does that team specifically need at that point in time. I've seen so many times where you look and see these guys when they do the initial rosters and you watch an NFL game and they're naming these guys off and they're from everywhere. I mean, not even names you would think you would hear that are on some of these prolific programs. But, even at the NFL level, you will see people that leave their junior year or their senior year, whatever the year they decide to go to the draft, and they actually improve going into the NFL. So we always talk about the development of players that go from high school to college. You will see some that could be just a solid second or third rounder and end up becoming all-pro because they develop once they get into the NFL as well, because now they're at a higher level, an elite level, playing against other people that are, all at that status, and you'll see them even improve more through that process. So taking an offensive tackle versus taking probably one of the most prolific offensive players in the nation, it seems kind of crazy to think that, but realistically, it's what the actual team needs at that specific time and juncture, and that's the reason why we possibly could see that tonight.
When you have to make decisions, because sometimes you can get certain players at certain positions through free agency, and you might not be able to get that same player through the draft, and you folks are going to be listening to this after already knowing the answers to some of the questions we're asking right now, since we're not doing it live, as look like JJ McCarthy was all set to go to the Giants, maybe, I don't know. And Malik Neighbors gets selected in the number 4 pick. Is that right?
Yeah, number 6.
Number
6. Okay. I don't have my glasses on.
I missaw a number today too. Remember?
yeah, you did. But yeah, so there's a lot of factors in there. But when you look back and you say, the difference makers, and when you look at scoring points as an offense or even a defense, collecting sacks or turnovers, you look back and you see those players you missed. And you're like, could we as a franchise have done a better job of selecting impact players? It make a difference between what? Wins and losses.
That's right.
And if you got a quarterback, if you don't have a quarterback, maybe, Brock Bowers is not your pick. But if you got a quarterback who is accurate and get their receivers the ball, and then Brock Bowers is that really diverse player who is a winning player. And that's on the field, off the field, in the locker room, anywhere. He's that guy that fights for everything that he's going to get. Every inch on the field, he's going to fight. And I feel like those type players influence other players. And that winning culture. There's a winning culture in the NFL as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that you want to hear a biased view. I think that the Dogs have had the best player available in the last 3 drafts. And Trayvon, Jalen last year, which him falling to 9 is all he did was prove it to be a massive. It's criminal, right? Him being at 9. Yeah, just another Falcon flop for me last year. They take running back at 8, and Jalen Carter goes at 9. And this year, I think it's Brock. And so, Coach, I want to hear what you think about that. I have another question for you as well. What is the emotion when you're sitting here tonight watching this, and a player that you have actually coached is going to be drafted either first or second round, according to most? What is that like as you, and first of all, has that ever happened to you before, and that type of thing?
Yes, I've had 2 now. I had one, and his name was Dorian Porch, played at Virginia Tech, was drafted by the Raiders, and ended up becoming an unrestricted free agent as time went on. And now Ladd is that second one. And, there's just that feeling of completion because you feel like you were a part of that cog of the mechanism that was the coaching staffs that saw him over through the years that just had a little influence in his life. And obviously he grew through those influences, and you feel like you had some contribution to him. So, and it's really nice too personally because, I coached his older brothers as well, and I know Benji and Brittany very well, his mom and dad, and his grandfather was a huge contributor to our program. When I was at North Murray, got us a new turf field. Was able to get funds to bring in a new field house and things of that nature. So just to be able to see him, I was elated just watching him what he did at Georgia, but now to see him on the big stage, how he showed out at the combine, and now having the opportunity to be drafted possibly in the first round, being a 3-star kid out of Chatsworth, Georgia, I think there's just that feeling of completion. There's a peace in your heart about that kind of stuff. It just tugs on the heartstrings in a different way for seeing a kid that you contributed to just a little, cog of what they did as a developing football player and as a young man.
Was that grandfather the same one that was the diehard Tennessee fan?
Yes.
That was him, yeah.
He sure was. He owns a business manufacturing company. I'm not sure what they actually produced in Chatsworth in Murray County, but he had some money to work with, and he had a lot of donors that helped with it. But it turned that beautiful facility and just something unbelievable with that turf field and the field house that was put in down there. So, but yeah, he was the Tennessee fan, and I remember very well Hinton and Ladd and even Brittany, his mama. They wore Tennessee gear all the time. It was so funny when he finally decided to take the plunge to Athens. So I was so excited for him.
Bless their heart. Bless their heart.
I know, right?
As we continue to watch, and we're watching the draft, and the Falcons are coming up shortly. We're not going to hold our breath for that. We're going to keep on and maybe cut to that as we commentate just a bit. But
I think the Titans take Brock. I'm going to say that they take Brock. I'm going to make that pick right now.
Wow!
Here we go. Pick 7.
Let's see. They got the Planet of the Apes advertisement on right now on my TV. So,
or is that could be Brock?
Could be.
He is a different sort of animal on the field. And we're going to hold off right now it's going to take the commercial. We will cut back, of course.
Yeah.
But Smooch, as we move on, like I said, we're going to continue to talk about this draft. It's a big thing going on.
Yeah.
Do me a favor, Smooch.
Yeah, buddy.
You got a DFA close by?
Yeah.
So delusion is a fixed false belief that doesn't change in light of conflicting evidence.
They don't know reality from their dream worlds, and they won't go outside and play.
A fixed false belief that is not grounded in reality.
Yes. Delusional fan alert, the most popular segment in all of sports.
Maybe ever.
Previously I said in just podcasting, but stats.com says maybe all of sports. So
yes.
We're going to go with that. Smooch, there was a little ruckus today, and I think, and it was started last night, and the ruckus is fine. We like the ruckus on Twitter, and Twitter's
the ruckus. Yes,
we cherish the ruckus. So we crave engagement. Twitter's the place for engagement. I mean, we're kind of building our YouTube, and we've been doing great on TikTok, but engagement, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, I'm calling it Twitter.
We're going to call it Twitter. We're like 50 years old. We have to call it Twitter.
We are. We're going to call it that forever. So. May change names again. We'll still call it Twitter.
Yeah.
But we kind of got going, and it's a very strange thing. And you folks are going to pick it up and look at it, and when we talk about it and see what we're talking about. But it was not even about Georgia Bulldogs. It was about Missouri and Tennessee, and it was kind of comparing those teams. It was just really we believe in Missouri. Had a great couple of seasons. We don't know what they're going to do going forward, but the best way to give Tennessee a hard time sometimes is to overlook them and talk about the next team that is better than they are.
Yeah,
we know how that works. I mean, they may be better than Tennessee, but it's the delusion in the Tennessee fan base that automatically thinks if it was just a one-off, we could just disregard it. It's every year,
every season,
every season. It's the same narrative, and we call it out and bookmark it and have a great time. And tell us a little bit about what transpired in the last couple of days on Twitter with the Missouri-Tennessee debate.
Yeah. So, Missouri handled Tennessee this year, and it appeared
very much so.
And whereas, Heupel came in and his team's been on kind of a roller coaster. They're up, they're down. They run a very gimmicky offense. They blow out bad teams by 70, and they struggle against teams that know how to play defense. And it's just not And because of it, their defense suffers, and whatever. But it looks like Drink over there at Missouri, he seems to be, I hate to use this term, building a team the right way. He's doing well on the recruiting trail. He's added some great transfers, but he's got some big recruits in. Their NIL program appears to be really functioning well because of the kids they're able to get and pull away from much more prominent, for lack of a better word, schools. And so, yeah, I said, I would say Missouri has the upward trajectory right now, and Tennessee has the question marks. That was all.
And you said they're treading water.
They're treading water.
I said some people off.
Yeah, I said Missouri's improving. Tennessee's treading water because you're putting a freshman quarterback off, a redshirt freshman quarterback on the field this year. That means you're treading water.
They're lucky you didn't say worse. They lost 4 games last year.
They lost 4 games last year, and I think they would do really well to only lose 4 this year. But the thing that really got them the most was I said, well, Nico is an unproven quarterback, and he's going to have to prove it on the field. And to a Tennessee fan, that is nails on a chalkboard. And they immediately thought of their best insults, which were basically 6th, 7th grade type of, insults, because they can't, the football thing doesn't happen. And it was this, just because Nico has never started doesn't mean he's unproven. And so I took it upon myself to define the word unproven for them, because I felt like they didn't know. And it was that type of condescension. I'll define that for them later as well.
It's condescension.
But yes, that really ticked them off. But yeah, they
Smooch, and they argued you with saying, listen, he's the number 1 player per on 3 in this class.
Right.
And Smooch responded with,
yeah, I said, well, Clemson had a 5-star kid that followed Trevor Lawrence, whose name I can never pronounce because it's like Polynesian or something. And Clemson brought this kid in, 5-star, also number 1 quarterback in the country, and the kid just kind of melted away. And I said, so you can have a kid like Carson Beck, waits his turn, has all the potential, succeeds, or you can have a kid like the kid at Clemson that came in after Trevor Lawrence and did nothing. And now is, with his 3rd school. And so those are the different options. And so Nico could be either one of those, and that was something they were not prepared to hear.
I even heard him say something. How do you bring in Brock Bowers into this conversation? I don't know. But one fan was like, well, Brock Bowers was unproven until Brock Bowers was Brock Bowers. I was like, you could say that about every player who puts on a helmet in college football.
Yeah.
If that's the route you want to go. Yeah, we think Nico's very talented. But until he's a redshirt, is he still a redshirt freshman? Anyway, he's a first-year player, basically.
Yeah.
All the talent in the world until you can do it on a consistent basis and stay healthy, because that's a big question mark, too, with the way he's built. Until you can do it consistently, which matters, and stay on the field, you haven't done it yet, Smooch.
100%. It's just that the SEC is a very hard place to play, and there's lots of really good players. And there's nothing wrong with saying I've got high expectations for someone. I hope he does well. But honestly, we saw, and I said this over and over, we saw the same thing about Milton last year. These guys acting like they distanced themselves from Joe Milton last year. They did not. We had guys on our podcast saying Heisman Trophy, national championship. And even the On3 guys said, Joe Milton is going to blow up college football this year.
And they're bringing all these receivers back. And all that was said, and we were like, last year we were calling it out. Just not so fast, because you think that's the natural progression. It's not necessarily. They got beat 36-7 by Missouri. It's not like they got beat by a field goal.
Right.
36-7, butt whipping.
Yeah, you said it best. When you have a lot of ifs, Tennessee always assumes every if they have is going to work out perfectly and positively. And that never happens, but that is the delusion of the Tennessee fan. Every if is going to work out great. For instance, the 3 of us, we look at Georgia's schedule this year, and you think undefeated national championship? I don't think you can win the national championship undefeated this year. It would be a miracle. And so that's a realistic take, even though I'm a Georgia homer, to say, yeah, the national champion this year may have 2 losses. That's entirely possible with the absolute murderer's row of teams that's going to line up in the SEC, the schedule, and then in the playoff. And so, yeah.
It really took off, though. It really took off, Smooch. just you. And it's not a Tennessee-Kentucky debate, which that would trigger them as well.
Yeah.
But that Missouri may be better. You guys got hammered, and you were saying the same things last year. You said this year, and you got hammered. And you were saying that Milton was this and that because he was a upperclassman. He had all these receivers coming back, and because Josh Heupel
and the best arm in the history of college football. That was
they lost their minds on Twitter to the point that we had a couple of guys who were dropping the F-bombs about the Dawg show. We had got inside of their feelings so much by raising those questions that they just lost control of all sensibility and just embarrass themselves. So, guys, please go on Twitter and check that out.
It's great. It's great. And realize these are grown people. I went and they have jobs and stuff. Or at least they.
You got called 60 years old today, by the way.
I did get called. You're just a 60-year-old idiot or something like that. I said, well,
wow.
I'd rather be called an idiot than 60.
Well, speaking of being an idiot, I didn't definitely see Tennessee picking Latham, and here comes the pick from Atlanta right now. So.
Here we go.
Atlanta's either going to go backup, running back, or left guard.
They're not going to do anything right. I know that if they pick anything other than a defensive player.
And folks, that's based on history and evidence.
They took Michael Penix, man. Good gracious alive.
Is that what just happened?
Did they really do that with the 8th pick?
With the 8th pick, they did not pick a defensive player. They
may trade that pick. They may trade it. Who knows?
No.
Michael Penix.
That's
insane.
They really did. They really did draft Michael Penix in the top 10.
Yes.
Oh, my. Okay. Oh, my gosh.
You let that marinate. Folks, I know you'll listen to this later after you've already had a lot of discussion over that.
True, my face hurts.
The Falcons. Smooch is a diehard Falcons fan. He may back off of that. I don't know. I think he still kind of feels it. You know, we're all diehard Braves and Bulldogs fans. Smooch is the guy who really feels Falcons.
Yeah, here's my relationship with the Falcons. I can, and I'm not trying to be insensitive to anyone that has had real world domestic problems, but it is very similar to an abusive relationship.
It is.
Like, I love you no matter how much you hurt me and abuse me, and I wish I didn't love you as much as I do. There's nothing more in the world I want to be than freed of my love for you, yet you're the most dangerous and destructive thing in my life, but I still love you. And I sat there at 28-3. We all know what I'm talking about. And I leaned over to my wife and I said, you know what? The Falcons are the only team in the world that could lose this game. And 2 hours later, I was in my room wanting to vomit. That's what it's like being a Falcons fan. Anyway, we should probably get back to winning football.
If you could epitomize the Falcons team, especially over the last, it seems like really since the Super Bowl loss, I feel like if you could just epitomize a GIF, it would be Lucy with a Falcons head on her head pulling the ball out from underneath, and I'm Charlie Brown trying to kick the ball, and she continues to move it out of the way and me falling to the ground. That's the epitome of Atlanta Falcons football to me.
100%.
So as we deviate quickly, as we said we would, as we're watching this draft, and this is the only kind, you don't get this commentary anywhere else other than the Dawg Show.
No.
And Smooch, I want to, like last year, even though Bijan Robinson, great college player and potentially a really good NFL player, it was really odd to choose him at that point in the draft. We all know a top 10 running back is unusual because you can find those guys later on, very good difference makers later on. You got other holes to fill. What is your thought about Atlanta after signing Kirk Cousins, drafting Penix right here? Is it too fresh?
No, yeah. Well, I'll tell you. First of all, I like. There's a lot to like about Michael Penix. The fact of the matter is, Penix is what's called worth a gamble, meaning you gamble whether you can get him or not by trading out of the 8th spot, picking up some draft picks, and seeing if you can't get him later. Because I think he could fall to the 2nd round. I mean, I really think he could slip in the round. And I say you roll the dice and see what you can get. Because, like I say, I can name 4 players right now that'll be all-pro in 3 years that the Falcons skipped over for a project who in the biggest game of his career folded. You know, I mean, that's the truth. You know, it's just the biggest game of his career. He played great in that one game. We came in, Penix could be a first round draft pick, and then the biggest game of his career, he wasn't there, and so they're showing a graphic with Josh Rosen on it and Justin Fields. I can see this going a very similar route. I think the character is higher with Michael Penix. I just do not see the 8th overall pick. Trade to 16, trade to 17, and take a chance. And you probably could have picked up a second or a third round pick for that and filled one of your other many holes. Just a squandering of value, I would say.
I piggyback off that too, because when you're looking at it, you know, to me, where you win ball games, to me, and where you start that is foundation is offensive, defensive line. You're protecting those millionaires that are back there making choices. So an offensive tackle is a great pick, and I thought they would really go with the defensive edge. And honestly, my pick for them was going to be either Dallas Turner or the kid from UCLA that I can't pronounce, kind of got a Hawaiian Polynesian
Latu or something like that.
Yeah, you know, because that's something that you're wanting to look at to see them grow defensively. They were,
and he's got
terrible.
the best hands. He's got the best hands of a D lineman in a long time.
I think they were dead last year in pass rush defense. So, you know, all of a sudden now you're going to pick, you've gone to the table and brought in Kirk Cousins to basically win now. And you're saying, okay, we're just going to continue to, you know, deny the defense what they need, and that is to pick that up. But you're right. I agree with what you're talking about. Trade up and maybe get a couple more picks, and I just don't see that being an effective, because like we talked about a while ago, GMs need to pick what's effective for them. And, you know, at this point in time with what they brought in with Kirk Cousins, I don't see how in the world that Michael Penix is the right fit right now.
No, you're spending $50 million on the guy that's going to keep him on the bench for a pick you're not going to play for the next 2 years. Yeah.
Unless you use him as collateral somehow. So what do you think in terms of Ladd McConkey? And you got two receivers here, and you got this Washington receiver going at 9.
Yeah, they went back to back. Washington just went back to back.
So what do you think about in terms? Is this on schedule here? You got two wide receivers off the board here in the top 10, or how is that going to affect?
It's tracking. You're at 3 wide receivers. Yeah,
three.
The draft is a little more wide receiver heavy than it is defensive back heavy. I think as we get to the middle and the latter part of first round, you're going to see more safeties and DBs pulled. Honestly, to tell you the truth, if the wide receivers continue on this trend and it follows that value, I could see Ladd being picked at the end of the first round. But if it goes more defensively as we move up the board in the first round with more DBs, safeties being picked, because there's a smaller sample size to pick from, then it may push some of those guys like A.D. Mitchell, even from Texas. His counterpart, I can't think of his name.
Worthy.
Yeah. Worthy. And then of course Ladd as well. But, you know, and then you got Kamari and Javon sitting in there as well. But yeah, I'm still thinking it could be possible.
Man, don't think, Tennessee fans, that just because we're watching the draft, you've been saved just yet. Delusional fan alert. We took a little respite from talking about you guys. We do like Missouri because they play the type of football we feel like is winning football.
That's exactly right, Troop.
On a lesser scale, because they don't have the athletes Georgia has, but they play complementary football, meaning their defense, their offense, their special teams all work together. And Tennessee hasn't been able to do that. They're more flash, and they can put up points, like Smooch said, against lesser teams, and you play NFL-level talent. You see they struggle to score points against a team like Georgia. And we call that out every year. And it's not just because we're Dawg fans. We just watch football, and we can call those things to attention. And that's not really what Tennessee fans want to hear. And that's why it's so funny when they get all up in their feelings, right? It is. And Smooch starts playing.
Competed 60 minutes. Like, these fans phenomenal. What an environment, man.
It seems like it's the sequel to what we did last year when we tried to tell you guys that just Hendon Hooker was a good quarterback. You had good receivers. You're not entitled to that same production next year under Joe Milton. We were stupid. We don't know ball. We don't know football, Smooch.
Yeah.
And we just said, just temper yourself. You guys don't have the roster yet. You can't skip steps. and your coaches aren't defensive minded whatsoever.
No,
don't think you're going to score all these points. But we also said, hey, if Heupel's that dude, if Heupel's that guy, you will. But we said this is a great litmus test to find out what kind of coach Heupel is. Because if he can bring in Hooker and Milton and these other receivers and they don't skip a step, and we will say, okay, guys, what you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, that's something I want to hear on Coach from. So when it comes to an offense, which is a gimmick offense, can you explain the pressure that offense puts on a defense to almost feeling abandoned or even overlooked on their own team, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, because the way it's set up is to isolate position players to play out of a position they're not comfortable with, where you've got people playing outside the hashes versus playing inside the hashes. And, once the sort of the algorithms are set into play, you can really start developing what they call tendencies. And when you see the tendencies, then all of a sudden you can game plan against certain strategies. And that's the reason why people refer to it as a gimmick, because over a period of time, they're trying to stretch you out and spread you out to run the football. But if you know that you've got these type of plays out of these formations and you can plot against that, it makes it more specific to keep the amount of people you need in the box that takes care of the receivers outside the hash, and you also can take care of the run as well. And all of a sudden, when you got people thinking less, that's why you can get lined up faster, because that's what they're trying to do, is confuse you with the speed, but yet the play being run is obviously, it fits an algorithm of what they're trying to do. And once that's figured out, it's done. And Kirby is a technician when it comes to figuring out. If you go back and watch the Tennessee game again that we played up there at Neyland this past year, if you look, there was a special deal that we did to their trips, their 3x1 formations and their 2x2 formations that they did outside the hashes, where we had everything defended correctly, but it was a technique that was not considered to be something that's done every day, where we're actually isolating the numbers and the hashes with our inside safety and nickel and blocking off their inside route coming back into the line of scrimmage. And I just really was impressed with what he had developed over time. And that's the reason why, like I said, we've seen the success against Heupel's offense with our defense, because, like I said, we've developed and see the tendencies now. All we got to do is keep up with their pace of play, and it's done.
I love it. What about if you're a Tennessee coach, what kind of pressure does that offense and that speed, that pace put on your own defense? Like, is it that the coaches ignore defense, or is the offense not conducive to having a good defense?
Offense tends to just ignore the defense. Any staff I've ever been on, it's sort of like, you just do your thing over there, and we're going to just try to beat you every play. If you have an offensive coach that tends to, gravitate towards his defensive coordinator, and I've had a few over the years, I think that helps more equal play, because they're more realistic about what they do, because I think it builds up some false perceptions of what your offense actually is, when realistically your defense is just building tendencies. You think about our G-Day game, there was about 3 or 4 plays you saw us, man, we'd lock down and go 9 in the box, and we were bringing people off the edge. We knew where the play was coming. We'd watched it for 2 weeks. Right. It's the same principle when you're out there at practice every day and you've seen those same formation sets and what they're calling. The defense tends to build tendencies off of that. So yes, it does. It actually, to me, kind of puts out a placebo, because then you start kind of thinking that your offense is just a little bit better than what it is. When it comes down to it, you just got a confused defense. You get one guy lined up wrong, and bam, you've got the vertical route completed for, the touchdown. But like I said, you lock that down, and you stay, grounded in execution with what they're wanting to run against those trend values, then it, like I said, it ends up falling to the wayside.
Awesome.
As we continue to watch the draft, Vikings pick is in, and it keeps showing J.J. McCarthy. I think he's the camera boy, or the guy they want to see his reaction to, and hopefully he's not sitting.
Is he this year's Will Levis?
He is. Can we get a petition where Desmond Howard doesn't get to talk anymore?
Oh my gosh!
Like, how can football be your job and you don't know football? I can't. Right. I can't. The most NFL ready player in the draft is J.J. McCarthy, according to Desmond Howard. He also had Texas A&M winning the national championship last year. Mm-hmm. So there's that.
There is that. And we continue to watch this and move off of Tennessee and Missouri. You guys can always rehash that on our Twitter, and it's still
I got a feeling
on.
it's not over. Yeah,
It's not over at all. They feel slighted, and Tennessee feels like that losing 4 games last year, that wasn't treading water. That wasn't a step back.
right.
And even though they preached on and on about how good Heupel was, and we said, hey, Heupel's that guy. He's going to prove it this year because he doesn't have these studs. Even though, I mean, Milton should have had a chance to do something. I mean, in terms of where he was as a player, he should have had a chance to have put up big numbers.
Well, you know, Tennessee Tim on the show, fastest quarterback in the country, best arm in the country, said it right here on the Dawg Show. And, you know, there's a lot, even if that was true, which it's not, there's a lot more to play in quarterback.
There's a lot more in terms of a team.
Yeah, I think the Tennessee is convinced they are constantly being disrespected, and it's that is the reason you disrespect them at the same time. And so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. But what are we talking about next anyway? Oh, you got something else?
And Smooch, over the last 20 years, when you've been that mediocre or less than mediocre, you just searching. It's better than it was then, and so that's what you lean on. We will move on as there were some other big happenings for Georgia this week. Man, we thought that J.J. McCarthy does get picked by the Vikings, by the way.
Oh, fantastic! So when you start
Fantastic.
talking about
They can put a camera on somebody else. I wonder who it'll be next. But so Christen Miller, a defensive lineman who has been tapped to have an opportunity this year to be a very valuable contributor to Georgia's defensive line, along him and Warren Brinson and Stackhouse, all players who've had some snaps before, and it might be his time. He entered the portal, and we were a little bit surprised. I say we were surprised. As I read more, Georgia's coaches had knew that there was some talk going on about this, and they had talked to him. So he entered the portal real quick, and we thought that what we're hearing is USC, possibly Florida State, and they were celebrating, both teams, especially USC, celebrating that they were just coming into Georgia and picking from Georgia's players who weren't, the definite first-string starters, just picking from Georgia. And they were loading up defensively, and they were having a ball with that. It didn't end up that way, and we'll talk about why we think that as well.
Yeah, I'm going to throw to Coach really quick. I'm just going to say one thing. If one of the joys of your program is transfer portal players, if that's it's a part of every program. Don't hear me wrong. You got to bring in transfer players. But if the foundational joy of your program is coming from you bringing these transfer players in, you got other problems. And the transfer portal is not how you build a team. It's how you accentuate a team. It's how you add the last touches to a team. It's not the foundation. It's the star on top of the Christmas tree. That's the transfer portal. Coach, I got to give it up to the Dawg Dispatch. You and John Tweet Sports. You called this return last night, correct?
Yes, we did. It just shows you how temperamental things are, because even if a person profoundly announces they're going into the transfer portal, that does not necessarily mean they're going to end up somewhere else. AKA Marius Mims. Marius Mims did the same thing. He entered in, went down, and actually visited with Florida State, and then came back and decided it was the best fit for him to stay at Georgia, which I'm so glad he did. He was a heavy contributor to our offensive line. I wish we didn't have to deal with so many injuries that he had to go through. But 100%. With Christen Miller, honestly, I told everybody to pump the brakes, because I really felt like those were cries for help that he was putting on social media. And honestly, I know the coaches sat down with him and got transparent with him and said, here, you really need to think this out. They kind of kept him grounded, what I call, we know what kids say nowadays, touch grass, come back to reality a little bit. And he is, and I guarantee you his peers had a lot to do with it too, because I'm going to tell you, when you have a peer-led program, which Coach Smart has mentioned so many times, that is the caliber of a great football team. And I'm sure some of his brothers, as he referred to in his social media cast, got in his ear and said, listen, man, look at what's happened with Bear since he's been out there. He thought he was the guy. And they put him out there, and they brought the smoke. And guess what? He didn't handle it too well. And he was part of a defense that was, 120th in the nation, probably even higher than that.
At best, yeah.
At best. So, him making the decision to come back, because to me this was I think he is a red shirt sophomore, so his third year in the program. And this is his development year. This is the year where he shines. Warren Brinson is an ankle turn or a shoulder injury away from him being the primary starter. And the way we rotate players, Christen's going to get a heavy amount of reps. You know how it works on the D-line. They're constantly subbing in and out. He's going to get plenty of play time. And I think they just, he's a homegrown boy. He's from the perimeter of Atlanta there in Cedar Grove. And I really do think that they just finally grounded him and said, listen, man, I don't think what you're looking for is worth the time and effort to go out there just to grab you a little bit more money, if that's what they're trying to do, because they are not producing anything from what they're just giving you false hope, thinking that you're going to get more. The grass is green on the other side when it's really not. And I called it last night with John Both. We both said that he's not going anywhere. And he made it pretty clear within 24 hours that he was not going anywhere. But I contribute that to the coaching staff. I contribute it to his brothers there that he plays shoulder to shoulder with.
He said was in his ear a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Really? TID definitely. Yeah. TID actually made him. It was funny. Make him apologize on a video Instagram. I thought that was funny too. That's the reason why I said I think his peers had just as much influence in his decision than the coaching staff did. Because it's coming down. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I didn't see that. And you're at Georgia. They have made a name for themselves recently of defensive lineman development and put them in the NFL. You don't have, like Smooch said earlier, you don't have to have 55 snaps a game to be an NFL player in the first or second round. Mm-hmm. And so, this is the best place to play against the best players, to develop yourself into the best player you could possibly be. So I assumed and listened to his little rap video before that this was about NIL and maybe he needed, I don't know. That's what I assumed it was about money.
Sometimes I think these players, Troop, just kind of, and Coach, you can speak this as well, but I think they just kind of feel lost in the shuffle. You got the new shiny toy coming in. You've been there for a few years, and it's the first time you don't have the full attention of your authority figure.
That's a great point.
And you just want to be patted on the head, and it seems like that's exactly what happened, Troop.
And since we're not there, we don't know the conversations that happen. I would assume that as adults, if we got a problem or an issue or a big question about where we stand, we talk to other adults about it. Mm-hmm. We just don't know if Georgia, I'm sure, does their due diligence, but does the player say, okay, this is what I'm feeling? And I just don't know. There's conversations happen before you put your name in the NIL portal or in the transfer portal. It's basically an NIL portal.
that's a good Freudian slip. Yeah.
So that seems like a big move. And I wonder how many of these conversations are had. I didn't see, maybe you guys, maybe the other listeners didn't see either what. And you said TID mentioned something, some other. Mm-hmm. Did you see anything on social media after he decided to stay at Georgia that came out that's worthy to bring to light?
Well, the Instagram apology video is pretty cute, yeah, and it's all done in jest, like they're having fun with it. But you can see the leadership of these guys, and the fact that it's TID, who's a guy that hasn't yet, as Coach said, taken that jump to dominant player. He's got all the ability to be a dominant player, but hasn't taken that step. But you see, that's a leadership move, and that's the type of thing you just love. One of the greatest rewards, and all three of us have coached before, and I lead a group of volunteers every week in a music ensemble. One of the greatest rewards there are is when you don't have to lead through something. Your core steps up and leads through it for you, and kind of the herd kind of polices itself. That's a reward as a leader when the guys you've poured into take care of the problem. And I have a feeling, I'm sure the big guys stepped in, but that his own players were in there fixing the problem. That Georgia's the only place that kind of thing's happening right now.
Is there anything specifically that you may not, and I hate to bring this up, you don't know anything specifically that was said on social media or contributed to him staying? Anybody say anything?
Oh, I didn't see anything like that, like a new NIL deal or I didn't see anything like any sort of bargaining or anything like that. It was just, I don't know. It was very cryptic. You can say? We'll find out in the next few days. Scott Fitzgerald probably knows. We need to get him.
He probably knows a little something. But you know anything, Coach? We don't know.
I would say that there was definitely something that behind closed doors, listen, you are going to eventually be drafted in the NFL. We're going to continue to develop the hell out of you over this next year, and then possibly that next year when he's eligible for the draft, you're looking at a possible being a solid first round or second round guy because you stayed here, you stayed in the system, you developed, you continue to progress and be a contributor to the program. So I hope that the longevity of things, there was a growing up process from him, because from that rap video to the comment that he made in the car with McKell, the real short thing about them needing to be up at Ohio State, McKell and, all those other guys in his ears, because McKell was a heavy USC recruit, because obviously was committed to him and then came back. And then, and there's a lot of stir right now because of the Justice Terry commitment as well. So, that's the thing about it. I think there's going to be a lot hurt feelings from the USC Trojans because because of this whole situation. And I just think this is one of many things that's going to give us some gratification once we get to December because of this. But Christen, I think, just made a grown-up decision. He finally grew up and got into his adult big boy pants and said, you know what, this is what I need to do. And hopefully it'll be the best thing for him, be the best decision he's ever made.
Maybe we can say maybe that happened. Maybe Georgia, maybe the NIL said, hey, we're going to make it a little easier for you the next couple years, and this is what we can offer you. Maybe because I will say defensive linemen. If I'm going to spend money on any position, a lot of times it's going to be defensive linemen because they're the toughest ones to find. They're the difference makers, and so maybe that happened. But also to speak to what you just said. And USC involved, because I have them circled right here on my tablet. That USC.
Shout out Zooloo Trojan. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's our buddy Zooloo Trojan, and they were enjoying it. But we've also heard word from, let's say, there are a couple of commits who've recently committed in the past few weeks to USC, Georgia boys, and one of them is Justice Terry. The other, Isaiah Gibson. Both defensive players, I think, that Georgia wants. But both of them have also come out and said, I'm committed to USC right now, but my options are open. I'm going to take all the visits. I'm going to listen to recruiters, which if you're a USC fan, you are lying to yourself if you don't think. If I was a Georgia fan and it was the opposite, there's a player from California saying that, I'd be like, well, we know how this story's going to end. Right, Smooch?
That's exactly right. Try telling your wife, hey, baby, I'm committed to this marriage, but I just want to keep my options open. Let me know how that works out. Yeah.
Right. So we're going to enjoy that because you can get caught up in the flash, and sometimes it's just that moment. And I mean, give it to California, give it to USC, give it to Los Angeles. They have that flash, but when you really dig down and see what that area is all about and what football, how you're going to get better as a football player, and you can compare that to a program like Georgia and Kirby Smart. We know Kirby Smart likes defense, right, Smooch? He does. He likes defense.
He does, and he's good at it. And the Dogs actually play defense. I'm sorry, I was distracted. Bo Nix was just drafted at the 12th pick of the first round.
That's hilarious.
I'm sorry. But, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Kirby loves defense. He's great at it.
49-3. Bo Nix 0-4 against Georgia. Anyway, so yeah, Kirby likes defense, and so these players, as they kind of sort through and talk to the right people, finally decide, hey, that was fun for a little bit. That flirtation was enjoyable. I like being liked. She's really pretty, but there's something behind that. That makeup comes off, not so pretty.
Right.
And the makeup comes off eventually, Smooch.
Symbolism over substance, a famous commentator used to say. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So the makeup comes off, and then Georgia is the proven commodity. Georgia wins championships. Georgia sharpens steel against steel. Georgia is serious about football, and not just the appearance of football. And some of these other programs are unserious. It's the appearance of football. You see two-hand touch. You see finishing 116 in defense despite your whole fan base thinking you're going to be a top 10 defensive team. Not serious.
Yeah.
We learn from those things. You should learn from those things. And when the makeup comes off, folks, you're left with what you're left with. And these recruits are going to have to face Kirby Smart at some point. And that's just the best choice.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, if that's so good. No, everything you said is exactly right. That was so good. No, I think that if I was going to caution a kid right now coming out of high school that was a top recruit, I would say don't go to anywhere that sells you the life. If they're selling you something about how great your life is going to be when you get there, right? We've listened to the Player Lounge. Hey, there's nothing about the life at Georgia that you're like, oh, by the way, come here, you get to puke on yourself and hear how you're not as good as you thought you were for 3 to 5 years. It's great. No, you don't get. There's nothing to sell there except championships.
Yelled at,
right? Get Kirby on his megaphone. He does. By the way, he doesn't need a megaphone, but he has one. And so the problem with USC is they sell the life, and they've got a great life to sell. They've got a beautiful place, a beautiful location, a beautiful campus. They've got expensive NIL. They can introduce you to celebrities. All of that means we can't play defense. That's literally what that means, because defense takes physical and mental toughness. And when you're selling teenagers a life, you're not selling a product that can win. And that's something that Kirby can sell because he's got the proof. The only playoff era coach to win back-to-back national titles.
Yes. And speaking of defense and wanting to play and be mentally committed to it, this is the first time in the common draft era that not one defensive player was taken in the top 10 picks.
How about that?
Wow. Great stuff.
And 3 tackles taken before Amarius Mims.
Yes. Yes. And to tell you honest truth, I think Carson Beck gets picked if he goes into the draft this year before probably 3 of those 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Honestly, to tell you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Without a doubt. But he's going to be back playing for the Georgia Bulldogs next year. That's
I like that too.
We're still looking for Brock Bowers and Amarius Mims and Ladd McConkey. And they're making a choice right now. Who are we looking at right now? It looks like a Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I think they're anticipating a Brock Bowers pick for the Raiders.
Who's the quarterback with the Raiders there, Smooch?
Well, you got Zamir White's a running back, so you got
who's QB in that? Smooch is going to look that one up.
I got to look that one up, buddy.
They're playing in Las Vegas now, aren't they? Because we've been to Las Vegas a few times, and I'm like, okay, well, it's we got look at that tight end as they bring Brock Bowers out there, 6'3.5" or 8. Is that 8? 243 pounds, and what a difference maker he's been through his college career. And the first thing we saw with Brock Bowers was him in Napa Valley. It feels like running up and down because of the COVID year. No, he wasn't on campus. He was just running up and down a hill, showing the coaches how committed he was to prepare.
That's right. Right. His mom was holding the video or the phone and everything. It's awesome. Gardner Minshew, the late round selection from a few years ago that surprised and held his own in a few places. He's now in Vegas.
Gardner Minshew. He had that really good mustache, right?
He's got a fabulous mustache.
And we appreciate facial hair in men. We do.
Yes. It's showing Aiden O'Connell as the quarterback for the Raiders.
Goodness.
That's what it just showed. I just watching it. I don't know if you see it here in a second. Y'all may be a little bit behind me.
I think we are. They're patting him on the back. Brock Bowers.
Saying, Aiden O'Connell competing with Gardner Minshew for the starting position for the Raiders this year.
Is that Brock Bowers, the 13th pick? Is that what they're going to go with right here?
Pick 13. It's done. Yeah.
Look at there. Brock Bowers does get selected. He's going to play NFL football, strangely enough, folks. Yeah. Congratulations to Bowers.
Brock Bowers makes a lot of sense. I've always thought Vegas is a terrible place to bring in wide receivers because of the wide receiver attitude in that town. But Brock Bowers is such a boring dude. He'll just stay in his room and play, I don't know, Rocket League or something all day long. He's a good guy to have in Vegas. That's a solid pick, and he's gonna. Hey, you got the best player in the draft, so enjoy.
So we'll commentate more on that one in just a moment as they move on. Smooch, you asked about this. We're gonna do it. Where's that guy that does the cold takes? Hit it.
I got him somewhere. Here we go.
You don't even know football. That is a cold take, my friend.
It's been a while, folks, Dawg Show fans, since we did a cold take. And this is kind of cold because we're going to talk about, is it Jaden Rashada?
Yeah.
That, and I saw this on Florida Twitter. Take this for what it's worth.
And you had me at Florida Twitter.
That's right. It's not what it used to be at all. I did see where somebody put a little thing up that said, "Hear me out. Graham Mertz greater than Carson Beck this season," and that was laughed at roundly as we looked at that, and even Florida fans were like, "Come on, dude, you guys, we lost like 7 games last year, and 7 games every year for the past few years."
Yeah, that's what.
So let's back up and talk about Rashada, who was their number 1 quarterback on the board, a very highly recruited quarterback. And last year's, there was 2024 recruiting class, that cycle, or 2023?
Three.
Three.
The one before this one. Yes. And we had a great laugh as they got him flipped from Miami, and they were so excited. Florida.
Oh, my gosh. Insufferable. Yeah.
They're back. We got this quarterback. And the word came out, Smooch, that there was a sizable NIL package that they had offered him, and he could not turn it down. It was in excess of $10 million.
None of us could have turned it down. I mean, they were celebrating in Gainesville, bath salts for all my men. I mean, it was this great and grand celebration across the board. But when you guarantee a lot of money to someone, you have to give that money to them, even in Florida.
So we didn't know who Rashada was, other than that he was a Florida guy, right? Mm-hmm. And the more we watched that, we're like, okay, whatever. You still suck. You're a train wreck. You've proven that over the last couple of years, and got a good quarterback. Okay, well, things fell apart. That money did not come through, and he decommitted. And he transferred or ended up committing to Arizona State, which I don't know why. But now that he's kind of gotten into the transfer portal and committed to Georgia to play backup quarterback, it makes me rethink this whole Jaden Rashada thing. And that cold take of that he was going to be the savior of Florida football.
Yeah, they looked at him like a Cam Newton. That's the kind of comparisons they were making, that he can put a team on his back and just carry them to a national championship. Again, I'm going to throw to Coach really quick on Rashada, but the number one thing that draws me to Rashada is that Florida was excited about having him, and now their dreams are crushed.
Before we go to Coach, I want to throw it to him after this. Does it mean anything else that he went to Arizona State and then I guess
he had an injury. He had an injury riddled year last year at Arizona State.
So is Arizona State throwing him big bucks? Then he's going to sign with Georgia to play backup quarterback and develop.
I think
mean he's had a change of mind in terms of where he's.
I got you on that one.
Do it.
Sure.
His family's from Arizona. His dad played at Arizona State. And that's the reason why it was home. So it was a comfortable move for him to do that. What I see is not only did he take what he did, I think he came from a prima donna state almost in this. I hate to even compare it to Juju Lewis because I think there's a lot of moving factors with what's going on with him and his family trying to play the game in today's time. But I think he fits that same profile, and he definitely chased the money. Heck, I would have chased that money. But he ended up going to Arizona State. That's where his dad played ball. He grew up basically with the Sun Devils. He knows their traditional values and things. So it was a comfort move for him, especially after all that went down with that debacle. But what I watched were the pressers that he did through the year in the summer leading into going into Arizona State. And what I noticed in his 3 games he played, he was hurt for the rest of the year. So he is medically determined as a redshirt. So believe it or not, he's in the same class now coming over to the University of Georgia in Ryan Puglisi's class. So he basically takes over the spot of Dylan Raiola, who,
cool. Yeah.
So that kind of puts that profile on it. But what I see is a growth mentally. A kid needed to grow up a little bit. So prima donna converted to a guy realizing, you know what, I'm not as good as I thought I was. Now I'm coming to a program that is definitely successful, that definitely knows what it takes to develop a great quarterback and to be able to have someone that can be a successful quarterback that produces winners, that surrounds themselves with productive people. And so there was a lot of talk at the table, I'm sure, while he was here over the week, through the week. And that's the reason why his decision was pretty permanent. I mean, he wants to come in and compete. And honestly, when Carson leaves, what I love about it is it now allows us to have that we have that 4 quarterback rotation that Kirby wants, to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks competing very hard. A lot of people want to compare it and saying he's going to take Carson Beck's spot. That's not going to happen. I will fight that and kick rocks with anybody until I go to my grave on that one. But he is definitely going to be fighting for QB2. And, that's the reason why I have to say it, I'm not a big believer in Gunner. I like Gunner as a player. I think he's a solid athlete. I just don't think he's got what it takes to be the QB2. So, and I can't say anything about Pug yet because we didn't get to see him in the G-Day game, so I haven't got to see him against live reps. Of course, they have, but I haven't. But everything I've heard up to this point, and I heard he hurt his kneecap. I believe he has a broken... He broke his kneecap.
He fractured his kneecap, yeah.
That is a hard bone to fracture.
Yeah.
In my days of athletic training, that was one of the bones. It was that and your shoulder blade. It was probably about the 2 hardest bones to break in your body. But anyhow, he did. So, I mean, his development obviously is going to be a little skewed due to the fact that he's not getting those reps because he's immobile. But, him and Pug and Gunner. And then you got Ryan Montgomery, if he stays committed, Lord willing. I think he's going to do the same thing. We're going to have some we've talked about it in a nutshell. If you put it in a square, we will have 4, after Carson leaves next year, we will have 4 quarterbacks that fit the epitome of what we want in a quarterback room. We have humble, eat off the floor, get after it, want to compete, want to be QB1, and we're going to have a dogfight. And believe it or not, whoever ends up being QB1 is definitely the person who has the job. We're just going to have a solid room. And if it does take maybe one leaving, that's the reason why. That's what we're in nowadays. I mean, this is what college football is. I mean, you're going to have somebody upset, and you're going to have some people that are happy. And unfortunately, that's just the dog eat dog world. Pardon the pun. When it comes to who's going to be that QB1 for next year after Carson leaves, but I think Jaden brings a great element to the table. He's going to have to get stronger. His lower body is very weak, but as far as his fundamentals, great footwork. Definitely moves well in the pocket, very accurate passer, got a very quick release. Looks like his decision making. Of course, I've got a very small sample size because I only got to really watch a little bit of high school tape, and of course that's hard to evaluate. But only a few games where he got hurt at Arizona State. So but what I did see of him, I'm impressed with. He has all the tangibles you want as a quarterback. Now he's got to grow up mentally, and I think that's what Kirby brings to the table, and that's what solidifies us having a quality guy fitting in position, being right there with the rest of those guys to fight for that QB1 spot next year.
Yep. Smooch, and you mentioned this so many times, and Coach Smart wants 4 scholarship quarterbacks and a preferred walk-on. So he's I read something today about he's got a preferred walk-on that he believes in, and so he wants that because he wants competition, because that brings out the best in you. So he wants those options and competition because you just don't really know. And I really think, as Coach said, you got some guys in there who are willing to fight, to come out of that box, to be a killer, to be the best that they can be, and to earn those reps and to earn those snaps. And you got players who may stick around because it gets really tough to keep over recruiting these guys or recruiting these guys over and over again, and then worry about in the middle of nowhere somebody could just up and leave. And I think Kirby Smart is trying his best to roster this team in a way that is conducive to this landscape of college football.
Yeah, and you have to pay attention to what all this means. Scott Fitzgerald always says you can't keep them all. Every time we have him on the show, you can't keep them all. And when Kirby's stockpiling, he knows something. And, I'm a huge Gunner fan because I like his moxie. But to Coach's point, Rashada, you do not turn down what he could have gotten somewhere else to come in and compete for the 3rd spot. It's surprising that he wants to compete for a backup spot, but you do not turn down what he no doubt turned down to come in and compete for the 3rd spot. He's coming in to compete for 2, which means he's been told that is a vulnerable spot where you have the talent to make a move there if you continue to progress. So I think it's iron sharpens iron, like you said earlier. It can only make these guys better. It can only make Gunner better.
Well, it makes sense.
That goes.
it makes sense because he knows Carson Beck's going after this year, right?
Yeah.
And so as a player with the kind of mentality that we want at Georgia, you want the opportunity to compete. And so he knows he's got an opportunity to compete with Gunnar Stockton.
That's what's encouraging about him coming is that he is seeking out competition, not a position.
Exactly.
But don't you think? I was gonna say, but even excluding the fact we're kind of talking everything with Carson Beck gone, don't you think Carson Beck sat down with him in an office room somewhere and said, you know what, it's all right to be a little patient and wait your time and all of a sudden have a chance for an opportunity to win a championship, and not only that, maybe win 2 championships and have these kind of deals, the Lamborghini deal, the NIL coming in and be a high round draft pick by the time it's said and done. These kids just don't want to wait anymore, it seems. They don't realize that veteranship, that tenure, that time, if they'll just be patient, they could turn the opportunities that would take them in, those rounds where they declare for the draft and go in the 4th and 5th round, and then you never hear from them again because they fall down a rabbit hole. All of a sudden now turn around to be first-round draft picks, and because they stayed the course, they continued to develop, they got better, they got that good money bag year, and, that's the year that you always hear it all the time, that's the year that kid made money, because of what they did on the field with their last year in college.
Yeah.
So.
Well, in today's college football, think about where you are in terms of Georgia and quarterbacks, where you've had Stetson Bennett come on and fight for everything he earned as a walk-on and win. And the coaches were actively trying to put somebody else in front of him, honestly. And didn't really believe in him.
So was I, yeah.
And we heard this. We know this for a fact that they were like, "No, I don't think Stetson's going to be the guy." Stetson made it where you couldn't. They liked his mobility and his versatility.
He took away the option. Yeah.
And so you got a walk-on who ended up winning 2 national championships, and then you got Carson Beck who waited his turn, and now is reaping the benefits from an upperclassman position where he had to wait and learn and wait and learn. And now he's been getting paid right now. He's paid right now. He's going to get paid next year as well. But to have those two guys as endorsements for doing it differently than a lot of college football is looking at doing, a lot of players are looking at. So you can sell that. That's my bottom line. You can sell those two things. Hey, Georgia, you don't have to get it at the front end. We will give it to you at the back end, and you'll get it. So you can win football games. You can be the best player that you could possibly be. You can, I always coach players to tap into the potential that you have as an individual. It's not the same. Everybody's different. Tap into your potential, and these guys can tap into their potential as a player at Georgia better than anybody else. And you heard them speak on it, and then you can make that money as well at a college level and at the next level. And so the fact that Jaden Rashada has said, okay, I'm going to compete against Gunnar Stockton, Puglisi, whoever else. That's what Kirby wants to do, and that's the way he wants to roster his program. It's the most effective way to do it, and let these guys figure it out on the field. You don't make any promises, do you? Don't make those promises. You don't promise people stuff in their living rooms. They earn it on the practice field. And so I feel encouraged that Rashada has come from where he's been and says, I'm willing to fight for it. I'm not going to be promised anything.
Yeah. We're at pick 15 in the NFL draft right now as we watch this. 1 year from now, at this exact moment, Carson Beck will be on a private jet flying to his new team as the savior coming in. 1 year from now, he'll be on that private jet. He's already in the air at this point because we're at pick 15, which means he's already been announced, celebrated, put his hat on, done some media, and gotten on the plane to go meet.
And Smooch, 2 years ago, he was in competition for QB3.
That's exactly right. Before the UAB game, he lost his job to a walk-on that no one wanted playing. Kirby even said Stetson's going to start this week. It was against UAB. That was the game that he said it's going to be Stetson this week. Get to the game. He says it's going to be Carson this week. Gets to the game, and it's Stetson. And the rest is history. And that's the type of...
Are you some preacher man?
The juice is worth the squeeze, as they say. And Carson's gonna get it all. And it's so gratifying when you feel like you have fully earned it, when you have walked through Carson's gone through every single step that you could make someone go to arrive at success. and he's now at it. And so that's a powerful negotiation when you're talking with other players and trying to encourage them, because he can show them. He's like, I lost my job to Stetson Bennett, and this is my Lambo, and next I'll be on a G5 365 days from now, flying to my new team as their savior.
Love it.
That's good words, man. I agree with you. You look now in today's time, it's almost a unicorn to see a kid last to their senior year. We're always talking about if the kid is making money their junior year, they're gone. And, one of the positions I find that to be less happening more for a lot of teams is if you have the quarterback position who has 2 years under their belt, 3 years under their belt, and they're staying till their senior year, it's almost guaranteed success. And that's what Carson Beck is going to reap from, because I'm going to tell you, it was very easy for me to harp on him. I still remember back when JT Daniels was throwing the touchdown to George Pickens in the Missouri game, and I was watching Carson Beck over there on the sideline being ridiculed because he was just over there with his helmet down between his legs, sitting there chewing on his fingernails. And I'm thinking, dude, you should be right beside your offensive coach or whoever that's calling plays in. You should be taking mental reps right now, and you're over there just trying to stay warm. So I was definitely not a big fan, and that just shows you the maturity level of where he's gone and where he's come from. And that's what's gratifying, honestly, as a coach, to see those things come into play. And even as a fan, seeing that kind of play as well, because those are things you don't predict. They just happen because, people have the right means and the right minds and the right people in the places to keep them there. Just like we may be sitting here in a couple of years or even next year saying Christen Miller, thank God he stayed, because he ends up becoming a staple on our defensive line, and we thought he might be going to USC.
Well, the thing that like a player, I always look at how many years you have left. So when they were like, okay, Christen Miller in the transfer portal, maybe going to USC or Florida State, and he's got 3 years left of eligibility, that's what hurt me. Because what he is right now, which is a good player who could make some plays, is probably not what he's going to be in a couple of years. And I was like, man, we could use that guy in his last year of football to win a championship. And that's the kind of guys you want to keep around. So I'm glad he's coming back. But talking about quarterbacks, and this is really an interesting conversation for both you guys to tap into this a little bit in terms of what Kirby Smart and his program, what they see in quarterbacks, how they recruit quarterbacks. As it got to the point, and people are going to use this lots of different ways, and they're going to use it to discredit Georgia, and I don't think that's where we're going with it. But is it worth it sometimes to not recruit that elite guy because it's so unpredictable of where he's going to end up? And is a juice worth the squeeze, as you said? Or would you just want to take a step below and to get the guy who maybe doesn't see himself in terms of that? It's such a minimal amount of difference in terms of, because you're looking at the high school level, and it is tough. It's so tough to put your finger on what makes that quarterback what he is in the next couple of years, or even when it gets to the NFL. Is Georgia's strategy going to be where maybe we, with the NIL and everything else transfer, maybe we don't go for the Juju Lewises. We recruit them. We do our due diligence, but we're just as happy taking those Ryan Montgomerys.
I think it's how you define elite. I think that 99% of the football cognoscenti and about 75% of fans define elite as physical traits. And I think for Kirby and what he's proven with these championship runs and this turnaround of the Georgia program, he defines elite different. It has to do with mindset, and he rates those up there with physical tools.
Yes,
and they're on an equal playing field for him. And so he doesn't see, when you look at Juju Lewis and that release and that accuracy and all of that, that's a desirable player. But it's possible Kirby doesn't see him as desirable as we do, because Kirby sees he's looking for traits that a lot of coaches are not looking for or at. And he obviously, that's undeniable, Kirby elevates character, humility, and work ethic to a level that is very close to twitch and speed and explosion. Of course, you want them all, but he elevates them, Coach.
And Coach, I will say that before we throw it to you, that you think about Carson Beck, got him in your system 3 to 4 years, and you got Ryan Montgomery in your system 3 to 4 years. And in this landscape of college football, that's pretty valuable, right?
Without a doubt. I was going to say, from a coach's perspective, what we don't see as fans, and I think there's something that's heavily involved with taking a risk with someone who's high profile, is recruit the parents. You go in and you sit in the living rooms with these parents, with the kids. To me, I recruit the parents. I look at what mindset they give him. Are they really involved in the fact that they want his grades to be good? Does he seem to come from a good character? What is his involvement in school other than playing the sports that he plays? And his athletic ability obviously has to meet those standards as well. But I think that's the reason why we're seeing more productivity, and I think more long-term productivity, as you were mentioning, Troop, because of the fact that these kids are hungry. They do want to see progress. They have seen people in front of them who have left early and not has been successful because they decided to, go chase the money versus being developed and being the best version of themselves before they did go to the draft. So I think there's a lot of play that goes into that. But honestly, I'm thinking Kirby's finally figuring it out. You know what? I would much rather go with a kid who's solid, who's got great character issues, who's a solid athlete, who's going to work their tail off, has big heart, big mindset, sees the big picture. It's team before me, and you're going to win with those guys versus ones that want to sit there and play the game. Because I really think Juju and them and his family were playing the game, and the game won. And unfortunately, that hurts in Juju's situation. And I really do. I hate it for him because I really do think he wanted to come back to Georgia. But when you've been known to be taking pictures with this kid since he was 9 years old, and you initially commit to USC in order to play a grab bag game with another program, and then that team says, you know what, you're not worth the effort, and I think that's what you just had, a very hurt feeling. Juju Lewis, you
could see it. You saw it.
You could see it. He just, and it's a 17-year-old kid, not even 17 maybe yet, because I know he's declared up for to come to college. So
right.
I really hate that because I feel like his parents played him and didn't allow him to make those decisions. And now, unfortunately, he's having to face those repercussions, because I do think Georgia has moved on from him in their recruitment of him. Mm-hmm.
I think so, Coach. You saw it. We all saw it. The little interview they did with after Georgia's Ryan Montgomery committed to Georgia. He seemed a little confused and a little shocked. I think he was led to believe that he was always going to be everybody's first choice.
Mm-hmm.
And he was that elite. And he is. But
100%.
Programs have to make decisions based off what their program's needs are, and Georgia is very confident in their development. And if they get 3 to 4 quarterbacks of that same like mind, and like you said, they do their research and know those guys and their background and their parents, and those things that definitely matter when how those just a quarterback is built. They're confident in their development. They're going to churn out some very quality. It may take 2 or 3 years, but the quarterback position takes that long to be that good, because and unlike Tennessee, who's basing everything off Nico, and he's got great traits. He's a beautiful quarterback, but when you're starting guys that young, you're going to take the bad with the good, and Georgia, that may happen at some point sometimes, but they would prefer to have quarterbacks be in their system for a while and learn behind other quarterbacks and the system. It's a process, and they're okay with that. And I do feel a little bit. It was eye-opening to see Juju Lewis in that situation. I think there was a realization, right, Coach, where he was like, "Oh, these teams can choose. The musical chairs game could be up, and my options could be less and less, and maybe at this point soon, USC, when they actually play games, is not as attractive as they were a few months ago."
Yeah, and that creates a bitterness that unfortunately a teenager has a hard time to overcome. My thing is just seeing those how many of these guys are we seeing the cerebral effect? Like you said, they have all the tangibles, they have all the sport specific skills to be a great quarterback, but they can't process past their first read. I mean, Justin Fields fit that profile, honestly, to tell you the truth. So it's not just about your physical game. It's also about your mental game. And a lot of those youngins don't bring that to the table. They think they're just going to show up because they've been a man among boys in high school. And now all of a sudden, everybody out there is running at the same speed and everybody is moving and processing your movements as quick as you are. And you've got to be one step ahead of them. And that's where development comes. That's the difference of the Carson Beck. I thought that was such a weird looking situation that they on the Missouri sideline to now being he is my QB1 who I claim thinks is going to win the Heisman Trophy this year.
Love it.
Folks, I will say I'm getting notifications still. It's not done. I'm getting notifications from Tennessee and the Mizzou debate on Twitter right now. It's so funny because TikTok's been our place lately. And just Twitter just took off.
I know.
The Dawg Show.
Twitter, you're going to love it.
The Dawg Show have an influence and impact over other teams' discussion. And just let that sink in just a little bit, folks. So they're having a good time on there, and we're enjoying it too.
We basically started a fight between Missouri and Tennessee.
We did.
But Troop, I like the way you say it. It's talking season right now, and until to me you put up and shut up and actually execute on the field, you come at me then. Come talk to me.
Eventually, football will have to happen.
Talking
season will be over, and we feel good about that at Georgia. We watched the spring game. We saw some other people who watched spring games. Who was that? NFL, I guess, pundit who watched several spring games this week, and he was very, very ecstatic about Georgia playing the most competitive spring game with the most physicality.
You mean with tackling?
Yes, with tackling. Strangely enough, with tackling, and Georgia played it like a real game, and so that was another unbiased opinion that Georgia's doing it differently than you are, because they have depth, they have the willingness to put everybody. Sometimes it's putting people at risk. That's just what it is,
right?
And you see these other programs are afraid to put people at risk. It's still football. Let them play football. But I can understand if you are thin, you are very careful. I mean, we can all be thin. We can all be careful at quarterback, but if you're thin at tackling.
That's right.
I mean, I don't have any answers to that, and everybody else is kind of questioning it as well. But I got a feeling, Smooch, that the next few days, after the draft's kind of continuing for the next few days as well, and just the developments in the past couple of days in terms of recruiting, it's going to be very fun on Twitter and on TikTok and on YouTube as well. And I've been enjoying it, and I was working today, and Smooch texted me last night. He said, okay, I'm done. I'm off. I'm going to be, I'm fully engaged on social media.
Hey,
so
we couldn't have timed it any better, right?
It
was great. We love the engagement, and even the aside from the Tennessee fans that say things about my mother for some reason, the rest of you we really enjoy, and all that that's fun. Football's a game, and games are supposed to be fun. And if they're not fun, then you're doing it wrong. And so, we love it. Keep it coming. and all you guys, it was funny. A Tennessee fan, and Florida fans do this too. They insult your podcast. They're like, no one watches your podcast. You guys suck. And I'm like, I can literally see you subscribing. Like I can see it. Like I get in an argument and we get 18 subscribers in an hour and a half. I mean, I can see it. So I mean, but it's not Smooch, no one listens. You do.
You do, yes. The funny thing is that we get the most vile comments, and then they get in our DMs, and say, "Hey, Can I come on your podcast? This happened today."
Today it happened. That's right.
I would be. Can you? Yeah. Here's my information. I would love to be your whatever for this team on your podcast.
Absolutely is the answer. Yeah.
So funny. So funny. We love it. That's fine. That's fine because it is part of it is a show and it's entertainment. Yeah. We enjoy that part of it. folks, I do want to appreciate Coach for coming on tonight. He's done some great stuff.
I forgot something. Hold on, let me do this. Thank you, Coach.
Coach. Hayes. Coach. Hayes.
There it is.
Oh, bumper.
Your life's about to blow up, Coach. Your next album's going to go aluminum.
Aluminum. That's better than that copper.
Oh, yeah.
Coach, you've had some content out the past couple of days. Tell us where we can take a look at it.
Yeah, the G-Day game gave me enough to where basically I can, oh my Lord, I was a kid in a candy store for about 2 weeks.
Yes, we saw it. It's great.
It was beautiful.
At Coach Hayes Huddle on all social media platforms, Twitter and YouTube especially, but I'm also on TikTok and Instagram. But follow me anywhere. You'll see any of those things. I'm trying to connect the fundamentals of football with the fan that loves the game.
It was I love that. It was so good, Smooch. I looked at his stuff and I was like, okay, I want to see what Jonel Aguero is doing right now.
That's so good.
What's some of the other spotlights you did from the spring game?
I did one on KJ Bolden. I really liked a couple things that he did. KJ Bolden, Jonel Aguero, Trevor Etienne.
Yes.
I did a role of reading the coverages and how we threw that ball to Ra on the sideline in the mailbox there towards the end of the game that set up the pass to Dominic Lovett. I did a great battle with Dylan Fairchild and Christen Miller at the line of scrimmage, where Miller absolutely blows Dylan Fairchild up on his side of the line of scrimmage, and Dylan takes his feet, resets, gets underneath just like he's resetting the passage, and then blows him out of the line of scrimmage, and we end up getting a positive run on it. But it was a great battle. I was trying to basically parallel the way that the game went, from a defensive line, offensive line perspective. So I think I did about 8 or 9. I can't recall all of them that I did, but there was a lot of good stuff that I was able to produce, no doubt.
It was so good. Yeah. And that's what Coach Hayes brings to the table, as we all want to see those players that we learn their names and we want to see what they're doing specifically. I think that's what me and Smooch talked about the last couple of years. We want specifics because sometimes we can talk about football.
I also did a big breakdown on Ryan Montgomery too. That's the other one. That's the one I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that one yet. I'll check that out.
Check it out, folks. And so those specific things and what a player is doing and what Georgia's doing when their offense or defense and how those players are integrated into that, man, it's so good. And it just gives you that different level and depth that is not out. There's not much of it out there. That's
not that is it's depth that is accessible to the layman. That's what Coach is able to do that I don't feel anyone else does as well. He makes it accessible as well as in depth. Yeah.
Yep, I understand it as a layman, as a casual, as I've been called multiple times this week. So we appreciate
in the last hour, Hayes. Actually, yeah,
last hour probably. We appreciate that so much, Coach Hayes. You can find the Dawg Show on the Dawg Show Pod. That is everywhere on our link tree. You can find it on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, and of course on previously Twitter. We're going to call it Twitter still.
Y'all aren't having any trouble finding that one, so I assume
Twitter X.
Twitter X. And so if you enjoy what you're listening to, folks, and we do a good job, I feel like we do a pretty good job of bringing you entertainment. Wherever you listen to us, give us a 5-star review. Tell us what you think. And I don't care if you get in our DMs and send us a message as well. We've seen some of that this week. We can argue on social media and still be friends. We really just want to talk football and rile you up to the point that you interact. That's the bottom line. We want to rile you up to the point where you feel that you got to say it. It's got to come out.
Rational conversations appreciated.
Sometimes we'll walk them down that path slowly there, Coach. It takes a bit sometimes. We enjoy that. You can say whatever you want.
I can't find my laugh track. There it is. Okay.
We won't hate you for it. We'll enjoy it. It's football. It's still not life and death. And so interact with the Dawg Show. That's what we bring to the table, sometimes differently than other podcasts, we think. And it's a good week, man. We're watching the NFL draft right now. And I will say that if you think recruiting is over for this season, it is not for Georgia. Never is it over. The months of June through July are huge on-campus visits. There's going to be a lot of moving and shaking during those months. So that's coming up soon, and transfer portals closing soon. When does that close there, Coach?
It closes on the 30th, and then graduate transfers they got one more day on the 1st.
Just so you know that those are facts. There's lots of inaccurate information going out that you still can't transfer within the SEC.
And also, too, they need to know that when they do transfer, they don't necessarily, like we talked about earlier, don't have to go to anybody. They may end up coming back to the school they originally started with. So just because they declared doesn't mean they're going anywhere.
We saw that this week.
You might want to slow those parades down there at USC.
Yes. The defense is still in need of a lot of help. And like we said, we've seen it with Georgia before. Marius Mims. Was it Julian Humphrey? Was it Daniel Harris? Maybe both of those.
They both did. Mm-hmm.
They both did and thought better of it. And Christen Miller, the latest, we think he's going to benefit from that greatly. We thank you so much there, Miller. We need those defensive linemen. You can't find them very often, and we enjoy having those guys stay in the system for 3 or 4 years and make their mark, because we're seeing it right now. We're seeing the fruits of the labor on the NFL draft, and we can't wait to see you guys make it as well. Smooch, you want to close with anything, buddy?
Oh, man, I'm good. Yep, Dog Show Pod. Come join the fun, and, hey, let's see what happens next. It's getting exciting around here. Yep.
Enjoyed it tonight, guys.
He got on his donkey.
This is the Dawg Show with Troop and Smooch.
Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show.
We interrupt this program to announce that Marius Mims has just been drafted 18th overall to the Cincinnati Bengals. He is now blocking for Joe Burrow.